The day my mother died, my father gave my bedroom to Renee. I stood in the doorway, watching him carry my things to the attic while my half-brother sprawled across my window seat, the one Mom and I used to share during thunderstorms. He didn't even try to hide his smirk. My name is Sela, and I learned that day that death doesn't just take people. It takes pieces of the living, too. It makes sense, my father said, not meeting my eyes as he stacked my books into a cardboard box. Renee needs more space for his gaming setup, and you're hardly home anyway with your new job. I bit back the words that burned in my throat. 24 years old, and I still couldn't stand up to him. Where exactly am I supposed to sleep? We've set up the attic. My stepmother, Greta, chimed in from the hallway. It's cozy. Cozy was a generous word for a dusty space with a slanted ceiling and a mattress on the floor. But I nodded, just like I always did. Just like Mom taught me. Pick your battles, she'd say. Keep the peace. Thanks for understanding, sis. Renee called out, his voice dripping with false sweetness. You're the best. I retreated to what remained of my mother's things, boxed up in the corner of the garage. Her death 3 weeks ago still felt surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't shake. As I ran my fingers over her old music box, the one she'd explicitly left to me, something shifted inside. Need help sorting through that? Serenity, my best friend, appeared in the garage doorway. She'd been my rock since Mom's diagnosis, showing up exactly when I needed her. I carefully opened the music box, and a folded paper slipped from a hidden compartment. Wait, what's this? Serenity moved closer as I unfolded the document. My hands trembled as I read the first line. Last will and testament of Eleanor Meyer. Oh my God, Serenity whispered, reading over my shoulder. Sela, this is the house, I breathed, scanning the legal text. She left me the house. Not Dad, not Renee. Me. A crash from upstairs made us both jump. Renee's voice carried down. Dad, where should I put Sela's old dresser? Just get rid of it, came my father's reply. She won't need it anymore. Serenity grabbed my arm as I instinctively moved toward the stairs. Wait, she whispered. Think about this. If they don't know about the will, then they've been living in my house? I finished, a strange calm settling over me. Making decisions about my property. Exactly. Serenity's eyes gleamed. And they just gave your room to the golden child without even asking. I carefully folded the will and slipped it into my pocket. Through the garage window, I could see Renee tossing my old stuffed animals into a garbage bag. The same ones Mom had saved for me, telling me to keep them for my own children someday. What are you going to do? Serenity asked. I thought about all the times I'd watched Renee get everything he wanted. The college fund that should have been split between us, gone entirely to his tuition. The family dinners where my father barely acknowledged my presence. The way they'd pushed me into the background of my own life, like a piece of furniture they'd rather not look at. Nothing, I said, closing the music box with a decisive click. Not yet. Not yet? I met her questioning gaze. Mom always said timing was everything. She taught me to play chess, you know? Said life was just like it. You have to think 3 moves ahead. Upstairs, I could hear Renee laughing about something with my father. The sound echoed through the house. My house, like a challenge. First, I said, I need to talk to a lawyer. Then we'll see who ends up in the attic. Serenity squeezed my hand. Whatever you need, I'm here. I nodded, pocketing my mother's music box. As we left the garage, I glanced back at the house. At my bedroom window where Renee now sat, king of his stolen castle. He waved down at me, probably thinking I was admiring his new domain. I waved back, letting him believe what he wanted. Mom's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes, sweetheart, the best revenge is letting them think they've won. For the first time since her death, I felt something other than grief. Something that felt a lot like hope. Or maybe justice. Either way, I knew one thing for certain. This house wasn't the only thing about to change hands. This is definitely legitimate, Tessa said, adjusting her glasses as she examined the will. The law office buzzed with quiet activity around us, but her focused expression never wavered. Your mother had this properly witnessed and notarized. The house is yours, Sela. I gripped the armrests of my chair. So I could just walk in and claim it? Technically, yes. She leaned forward. But given the circumstances, I'd recommend a more strategic approach. Your father's been managing the property since your mother's death. We'll need to document everything. Serenity, who'd insisted on coming with me, spoke up from the chair beside me. What about all the modifications they're making? Renee's room renovation? Every change they make without the legal owner's consent strengthens our case. Tessa replied, making notes. Though I have to ask, why didn't your mother tell anyone about this? I twisted the ring Mom had given me on my 18th birthday. She always said she had a plan. I just never knew what it was. Well, Tessa said. She certainly had one. The will's ironclad. But we need to move carefully. Your father's a businessman. He'll fight this. The office door opened and Tessa's assistant poked her head in. Miss Tessa, your next appointment is here. Give me 5 minutes, Tessa replied, then turned back to me. Start gathering documentation. Bank statements, property tax records, anything showing your father's financial dealings with the house. And Salah? Be discreet. I nodded, tucking the will back into my bag. As Serenity and I left the office, a familiar voice stopped me cold. Selah? Renee stood by the elevator, holding a coffee cup. What are you doing here? My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. Estate planning. Mom's death got me thinking about the future. He raised an eyebrow. In a law office? Where else would you do estate planning, genius? Serenity cut in, pressing the elevator button repeatedly. Renee's eyes narrowed. Does Dad know you're here? I wasn't aware I needed his permission to manage my affairs, I replied, stepping into the elevator. How's my room working out for you? The doors closed on his suspicious face. Serenity let out a breath. That was close. He'll tell Dad. So what? You're an adult. You can visit any lawyer you want. We emerged onto the street, the summer heat hitting us like a wall. Let's get coffee, Serenity suggested. Plan our next move. At the cafe across the street, I stirred my iced latte while Serenity pulled out her phone. Okay, we need to be systematic about this. What records would your mom have kept? Her study, I said suddenly. Dad packed everything into boxes, but they're still in the basement. She was meticulous about paperwork. Perfect. When can we get in there? Friday. Dad and Greta have their weekly dinner with the country club board. Renee never misses his gaming tournament at the arcade. Serenity grinned. Sounds like a date. My phone buzzed. Dad. I showed Serenity the screen. Answer it, she mouthed. Act normal. I took a deep breath and picked up. Hi, Dad. Renee tells me he saw you at Harrison and Associates. His voice was carefully controlled. Something you want to tell me? Just getting some paperwork in order. Mom's death made me realize I should be more responsible about these things. A pause. Which lawyer did you speak to? I didn't. I lied smoothly. Just picked up some forms. Why? Another pause. No reason. Will you be home for dinner? Can't. Working late. I hadn't slept in that house since they'd moved me to the attic. My apartment might be small, but at least it was mine. Fine. He hung up without saying goodbye, as usual. Serenity reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You okay? He's worried, I said, putting my phone away. He knows something's up. Good. Let him worry. Let him wonder what his perfect little world would look like if someone pulled the rug out from under him. I thought about Mom's study, about the boxes of documents waiting in the basement, about all the times Dad had dismissed me, pushed me aside, treated me like an afterthought while Renee basked in the spotlight. Friday, I said firmly. We go through those boxes, and then we show them exactly who they're dealing with. Serenity finished, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. As we clinked our cups together, my phone buzzed again. A text from Renee. Whatever you're planning, sis, don't forget who Dad's favorite is. I showed Serenity the message. She snorted. He has no idea, does he? No, I said, deleting the message. But he will. Friday night arrived with a summer storm, rain drumming against the basement windows as Serenity and I sifted through Mom's boxes. The musty space felt like a tomb of memories, each cardboard container labeled in Mom's neat handwriting. Found anything? Serenity asked, holding her phone's flashlight over another box. Tax records, insurance papers. I paused, pulling out a leather-bound folder. Wait, these are letters. Lightning flashed outside as I opened the first envelope. Mom's handwriting filled the pages, dated just months before her death. The basement door creaked. Someone's home, Serenity whispered, clicking off her light. Footsteps descended the stairs. We crouched behind the water heater, hardly breathing. A beam of light swept the basement. I know you're down here, Selah. Renee's voice echoed off the concrete walls. Your car's outside. I clutched the folder to my chest, heart pounding. Serenity squeezed my arm, warning me to stay quiet. Come on, sis. Let's talk. His footsteps drew closer. Dad's been asking questions about your lawyer visit. He's not happy. Another flash of lightning illuminated the basement. In that split second, I saw Renee's silhouette by the stairs, phone in hand. Fine. He sighed. I'll just tell Dad you were sneaking around down here. I'm sure he'll be interested in whatever you're looking for. Why do you always do that? I stood up, anger overriding caution. Run to Daddy with everything? Renee spun around, his flashlight beam catching me in the face. Because I'm not the one skulking around in basements going through other people's things. These were my mother's things. Yeah, and now they're Dad's. That's how inheritance works. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Is that what he told you? What's that supposed to mean? He stepped closer, noticing the folder. What did you find? Nothing that concerns you. I backed away, but he lunged forward, grabbing for the folder. We struggled, papers spilling across the floor. Serenity jumped up, shoving herself between us. Back off, Renee. Stay out of this, he snapped, but his momentary distraction gave me enough time to scoop up the scattered letters. You want to know what I found? I thrust one of the letters at him. Read it. Read how Mom really felt about Dad's precious golden boy. His hands shook as he read, face illuminated by his dropped flashlight. I fear for Selah's future in this house. He read aloud. Frank's favoritism toward Renee has created a poison that will outlive me. He looked up, face pale. This is bullshit. Is it? You're living in my bedroom, Renee. You took my college fund. Every Christmas, every birthday, it's always been the Renee show. That's not my fault. I didn't ask for any of that. No, but you sure as hell enjoyed it. Thunder crashed outside. Renee crumpled the letter, throwing it at my feet. Dad's going to hear about this. Of course he is, I said quietly. That's all you know how to do. He stormed up the stairs, the door slamming behind him. Serenity picked up the crumpled letter, smoothing it out. You okay? I nodded, examining the other letters. Look at this. Bank statements, property assessments. Mom was building a case. Against your dad? For me. I held up another document. She knew exactly what she was doing when she left me the house. She was protecting me from them. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Come home, now. He's going to be furious, Serenity said, reading over my shoulder. Good. I gathered the letters, tucking them safely in my bag. Let him be furious. Mom spent years documenting everything. His financial decisions, his treatment of me, even conversations she recorded. She knew this day would come. What are you going to do? I thought about the will in my bag, about Tessa's advice to move carefully, about all the years I'd spent trying to earn my father's love while Renee took it for granted. I'm going home, I said, heading for the stairs. But not the way they expect. Serenity followed me up. Want me to come with you? No, this is between me and them now. I hugged her quickly. But stay close to your phone. As I drove through the rain toward my father's house, my house, I thought about Mom's letters. She'd known this confrontation was coming. She'd prepared me for it, in her own way, leaving breadcrumbs for me to follow when I was ready. Another text from Dad. Don't make me wait. I smiled, thinking of all the times I'd jumped at his command. Not tonight. Tonight, I had Mom's truth in my bag and her strength in my heart. The house loomed ahead, every window blazing with light. They were waiting for me, thinking they knew what was coming. They had no idea. I found them in Dad's study. Him behind his massive oak desk, Greta perched on the leather sofa, and Renee leaning against the bookshelf with his arms crossed. The room smelled of Dad's expensive cigars and Greta's perfume. Sit down, Dad commanded, pointing to the chair across from his desk. I remained standing. I prefer to stand. You've been going through your mother's things without permission, he said, voice dangerously low. Sneaking around like a thief in my house. Your house? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He slammed his hand on the desk. Yes, my house. The house I paid for. The house I maintained while my mother what, Dad? I stepped closer to his desk. While she documented everything? His face paled slightly. Greta shifted on the sofa. What exactly did you find in those boxes, Selah? She asked, trying to sound casual. I pulled out Mom's letters. Everything. The college fund that was supposed to be split between us but mysteriously became Renee's alone. The trust fund Mom set up for me that disappeared. Even recordings of your conversations about pushing me out. Those are private family matters, Dad growled. Exactly. Family matters. So why was I always left out? Renee pushed off from the bookshelf. Oh, come on. You're not still bitter about the college thing, are you? You needed? I spun to face him. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school while you partied your way to a degree you never even used. That's enough. Dad stood up. I made decisions based on what was best for this family. Best for your new family, you mean? I pulled out another letter. Mom saw it all. She knew what you were doing. Your mother was sick. Greta cut in. She wasn't thinking clearly near the end. A knock at the front door interrupted us. Dad frowned. Who? That would be Dawn, I said. Mom's old friend? The one who witnessed her will? The color drained from Dad's face. What will? The doorbell rang again. Renee moved to answer it, but Dad waved him back. Don't. They'll keep coming, I said quietly. Dawn, Tessa, the executor of Mom's estate, they all know. Know what? Greta stood up, her carefully maintained composure cracking. Frank, what is she talking about? I reached into my bag and pulled out the will. Mom left me the house, Dad. Not you, not Renee. Me. The silence that followed was deafening. Renee snatched the will from my hands, scanning it frantically. This can't be legal. It's completely legal, I said. Properly witnessed, notarized, and filed with the county. Mom made sure of that. Dad sank back into his chair. You're lying. Am I? Check with the county records. Talk to Don. He's still waiting outside. Mom trusted him to keep her secrets until the time was right. Greta rushed to Dad's side. Frank, do something. Oh, he can't, I said, gathering my mother's letters. Everything he's done since Mom died. Giving away my room, renovating without permission. It's all been illegal. He's been making changes to property he doesn't own. The doorbell rang a 3rd time. Dad's hand trembled as he reached for his phone. Go ahead, I said. Call your lawyer. But first, you might want to check the property liens. Mom was very thorough about protecting her assets. And my inheritance. Renee slumped against the bookshelf. Dad? Get out, Dad whispered, not looking at me. Get out of my study. Your study? I smiled, channeling Mom's quiet strength. I think you mean my study. In my house. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. By the way, you'll be hearing from my lawyer about those renovations. And Renee, I want my room back by the end of the week. You can't do this, Greta protested weakly. Actually, I can. And I am. I opened the door. Oh, and Dad? Mom recorded your conversation about the trust fund. The one where you admitted to embezzling from it. I wonder what the police would think about that. His head snapped up, face ashen. You wouldn't. Try me. I learned from the best after all. Mom taught me to keep everything documented. As I walked out, I heard Renee's panicked voice. Dad, what are we going to do? I closed the door on Dad's response, finding Don still waiting on the porch. His kind eyes crinkled with concern. Everything okay in there? No, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. But it will be. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and fresh. As Don and I walked to his car, I could hear raised voices from Dad's study. My study, floating through the open window. Let them argue, I thought. Let them feel what it's like to lose everything they took for granted. Just like I had. The moving truck arrived at dawn. I sat in my car across the street, watching Renee supervise the removal of his gaming setup from my old room. Serenity handed me a coffee through the window. You sure you want to move back in? She asked. You could sell the place, start fresh somewhere else. Mom wanted me to have this house, I said, taking a sip. Not to sell it, to live in it. A crash from upstairs made us both jump. Renee's voice carried across the lawn. Careful with that. It's worth more than you make in a month. Your brother's taking it well, Serenity said dryly. HalfBrother, I corrected, getting out of the car. And he's lucky I'm giving him a week to move out. We crossed the street just as Dad's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. He got out, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Sela. He straightened his tie. We need to talk. My lawyer said all communication should go through her. Damn it, I'm still your father. Are you? I met his gaze. Because fathers don't steal from their daughters' trust funds. Another crash from upstairs. Renee appeared at the front door, face red with anger. The movers broke my limited edition console. Bill me, I said, brushing past him into the house. The entrance hall smelled of Greta's cleaning products. She'd been stress cleaning all week. This isn't over, Dad called after me. I have connections. I can make things very difficult. Frank. Don's voice cut through the morning air. He stood at the bottom of the driveway, holding a manila envelope. I wouldn't finish that thread if I were you. Dad's face darkened. You knew about this all along. Eleanor made me promise. Don said simply. She knew what you'd do if you found out too soon. Found out what? Renee demanded, stomping down the stairs. What else are you people hiding? Don handed me the envelope. Your mother's final gift. I was supposed to give you this once you'd claimed the house. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. My hands shook as I read Mom's familiar script. For when they try to fight back. Love, Mom. What's on it? Dad's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something close to fear. Let's find out. I headed for the study, my study now, aware of everyone following me. Serenity squeezed my shoulder as I plugged the drive into my laptop. Folders popped up, each meticulously labeled. Financial records, recordings, photos. I clicked on a video file. Mom's face filled the screen, recorded shortly before her death. Hi, sweetheart, she said softly. If you're watching this, you've finally stood up to them. I'm so proud of you. Dad made a choking sound behind me. Frank? Mom's voice continued. If you're there, you should know I've sent copies of everything to my lawyer. Every conversation about Selah's trust fund, every document you forged, every scheme you planned with Greta to push our daughter aside. It's all there. Renee slumped against the doorframe. Dad? What's she talking about? Your father, Mom said, as if answering Renee's question. Has been embezzling from his company for years, using Selah's trust fund to cover his tracks. I have proof of all of it. The silence in the room was absolute. I didn't want it to come to this. Mom continued. But I knew you, Frank. Knew you'd try to fight Salah's claim to the house. This is my insurance policy. My guarantee that you'll let our daughter have what's rightfully hers. The video ended. Dad's breathing was ragged. You knew, he whispered. All this time you knew what I was doing. She knew everything, Dawn said from the doorway. She just waited for Selah to be strong enough to handle the truth. Renee pushed away from the wall. So what happens now? Now, I said, ejecting the USB drive. You finish moving out. Dad can decide whether he wants his board of directors to see what's on this drive. You're blackmailing me? Dad's voice cracked. No, I'm giving you a choice. Leave us alone. Me in the house, and this stays between us. Keep fighting, and everyone learns the truth. Greta appeared in the doorway, face pale. Frank, the movers are waiting. Dad looked around the study, at the walls covered in his business awards, the desk where he'd made all his schemes, the life he'd built on lies. Fine, he said finally. Keep the house. Keep your mother's secrets. But don't expect anything else from me. I stopped expecting anything from you a long time ago. He left without another word. Renee lingered, looking lost. I really didn't know, he said quietly, about any of it. I believe you, I replied, but you still benefited from it. And now that's over. He nodded slowly, then followed our father out. Serenity put her arm around me. You okay? I looked at Mom's face, frozen on the laptop screen. She'd known this day would come, had prepared me for it in her own way. Yeah, I said. I think I finally am. The first night in my reclaimed bedroom, I couldn't sleep. Renee's gaming posters had left ghostly rectangles on the walls, and the air still smelled faintly of his cologne. I was rehanging my old curtains when headlights swept across the driveway. My phone buzzed. Serenity. Turn on the news. Now. I flicked on the TV just as Dad's face filled the screen. The headline made my stomach drop. Local business mogul steps down amid financial investigation. The reporter's voice cut through the quiet room. Sources say Frank stepped down following anonymous tips about irregular financial activities. Another text from Serenity. I swear I didn't leak anything. I know, I typed back, but someone did. My doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Renee's car in the driveway, his silhouette pacing on the porch. What do you want? I called through the door. They're freezing our accounts, he said, voice cracking. All of them. Dad's gone crazy. He's threatening to leave the country. Please, Salah, I need help. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Renee looked terrible, unshaven, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Where's Greta? I asked. Gone. Packed a bag this morning and disappeared. Dad's secretary leaked everything to the board. Something about him harassing her for years. He ran his hands through his hair. Did you do this? No. I stepped aside to let him in. Mom's USB drive is still in my safe. This is something else. Then who? That would be me. Dawn appeared at the bottom of the porch steps. Sorry, Selah. I know you wanted to handle this quietly, but some truths need to come out. Renee spun around. You? Why? Because your father wasn't just stealing from Selah, Dawn said, climbing the steps. He was stealing from everyone, including your mother's cancer treatment fund, Eleanor. My knees went weak. What? The money she set aside for experimental treatments. Frank transferred it all to cover his tracks. That's why she stopped fighting at the end. She couldn't afford to keep going. The world tilted sideways. Renee caught my arm before I could fall. He killed her, I whispered. He actually killed her. Not directly, Dawn said gently. But he took away her choices. I couldn't let that stand. Not after watching you fight so hard for justice. Renee's phone buzzed repeatedly, notifications flooding in. Dad's being arrested, he read, voice hollow. They're at his office right now. I sank onto the porch swing, Mom's favorite spot. What happens now? Now, Dawn said. The truth comes out. All of it. The embezzlement, the harassment, everything. Your mother kept records of it all, not just what affected you directly. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because you needed to fight your own battle first. Prove to yourself that you could stand up to them. Eleanor was very clear about that. Renee slumped against the porch railing. I have nothing left. No money, no home. You have an apartment, I said quietly. And a job, if you want it. The coffee shop where I worked through college is hiring. He looked up, surprised. Why would you help me? Because Mom would have wanted me to. She knew you were as much a victim of Dad's manipulation as I was, just in a different way. Don cleared his throat. There's something else you both should know. Eleanor left a second will with my firm, a private one, dealing with her personal assets. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. She split everything between you, equally. Said her children deserved a fresh start once the truth came out. Renee's phone buzzed again. He looked at it and laughed bitterly. Dad's asking for bail money, as if I have any left to give. Let him ask, I said. We're not his ATM anymore. The morning sun crept over the horizon, painting the porch in soft gold. Mom used to say sunrise was nature's way of giving us second chances. I should go, Renee said, standing up. Pack what's left of my stuff before they freeze everything. The guest room's empty, I heard myself say. If you need a place to stay, just until you get back on your feet. He stared at me. After everything? Fresh start, remember? That's what Mom wanted. Don smiled, heading back to his car. Eleanor would be proud of you both. Remember that. As his car pulled away, Renee and I sat in silence, watching the sunrise from Mom's porch swing. Not quite friends, not quite enemies, just two people learning to see each other clearly for the first time. My phone buzzed, a news alert about Dad's arrest. I turned it off without reading it. Some truths could wait until tomorrow. The courthouse buzzed with whispers as Dad was let in, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his usual designer suit. Renee shifted uncomfortably beside me in the gallery. 3 months had changed him. His designer clothes replaced by a barista's uniform, his arrogance softened by humility. I'll rise, the bailiff called. Tessa touched my arm. Remember, you don't have to speak if you don't want to. But as Dad shuffled to his place, I knew I had to. For Mom, the judge peered over her glasses. Before we proceed with sentencing, I understand the victim's daughter wishes to make a statement. I stood, my prepared speech forgotten as Dad's eyes met mine. He looked older, smaller somehow. My mother died believing she had failed to protect me. I began, my voice stronger than I expected. She spent her last months documenting every betrayal, every manipulation, every dollar you stole instead of focusing on her treatment. Dad's lawyer shifted in his seat, but Dad just stared at his hands. You didn't just steal money, I continued. You stole her peace. You stole her chance to fight for her life. And you stole years of relationship between me and my brother because you needed to keep us divided to maintain your control. Renee made a small sound beside me. I hadn't called him my brother since we were kids. The money you took from her treatment fund? I pulled out Mom's last photo, thin and tired but smiling. That could have given her 6 more months, maybe a year, time she could have spent with her children instead of gathering evidence against their father. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Meyer, in your opinion, what would justice look like in this case? I looked at Dad. Really looked at him. Justice already happened. He lost everything he valued. His reputation, his power, his ability to control others. Mom made sure of that. Your Honor, Dad's lawyer stood. My client has agreed to make full restitution. With what money? Renee interrupted from beside me. The money you stole from Mom's cancer fund? From Sella's trust? From my college fund that was supposed to be shared? The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Meyer, control yourself or leave my courtroom. Sorry, Your Honor. Renee sat back, but his words hung in the air. Dad finally spoke, his voice raspy. I want to make amends. No, I cut in. You want to make deals, just like always. But Mom kept receipts, every single one. The judge nodded. Indeed, she did. The evidence Mrs. Meyer compiled is quite comprehensive. She straightened her papers. Frank Meyer, please rise for sentencing. The next few minutes passed in a blur of legal terms. 8 years, no possibility of early release. Full restitution ordered. As they led him away, Dad turned to us. Renee? Sela? I'm sorry. Save it, Renee said quietly. We're not your backup plan anymore. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Tessa ran interference while Serenity pulled the car around. How does it feel to see your father sentenced? Any comment on the missing cancer treatment funds? Renee, what about your mother's disappearance? We pushed through them to the waiting car. As we pulled away, I saw Don standing on the courthouse steps, giving a statement to the press. He's good at handling them, Renee said, loosening his tie. Been doing it since everything broke. Mom chose her allies well, I replied. Yeah. He stared out the window. Listen, about the guest room. I found an apartment, moving out next week. You don't have to. I do. He turned to face me. These past months, living in Mom's house, working regular jobs, watching you rebuild everything, I get it now. Why she fought so hard to protect you from him, from what I was becoming. Serenity caught my eye in the rearview mirror. She'd watched this transformation too, from her spot behind the coffee shop counter where she'd trained him. You're not him, I said firmly. You never were. He just made us think we had to be what he wanted. Ms. Tessa says Mom's personal assets will be released next week, Renee said, after the restitution hearing. We could, I don't know, do something good with it? Like what? A foundation, maybe? For families dealing with cancer? Help them afford the treatments Mom couldn't get? My throat tightened. She'd like that. My phone buzzed. Another news alert about Dad. I ignored it, just like I'd ignored Greta's attempts to contact us from whatever country she'd fled to. Mom's birthday is next week, I said instead. First one since everything. Renee nodded. Think she'd mind if we had cake on her porch swing? No, I smiled, remembering all the birthdays we'd celebrated there before everything went wrong. I think she'd love that. As we drove home, to Mom's house, our house, I realized she'd given us one final gift, the chance to become the family she'd always wanted us to be. Just not the way any of us had expected. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh paint as I hung Mom's wind chimes on the porch. Inside, Serenity and Renee argued over furniture placement in the newly renovated living room. The bookshelf goes by the window, Serenity insisted. That's where Eleanor always had it. But the light would be better for the reading nook if we... The bookshelf stays, I called through the screen door. Mom knew what she was doing. The doorbell rang. Don stood on the steps holding a familiar leather-bound folder. Found this while cleaning out my office, he said, handing it to me. Thought you might want it. Inside were photos I'd never seen. Mom in her college days, young and vibrant. Dad before greed consumed him. Baby pictures of me and Renee. She kept everything, Don said softly. Not just the evidence against Frank. She documented the good times too. Renee appeared behind me. Is that us at the beach house? Before Dad sold it, I nodded. Mom's favorite vacation spot. The foundation closed on it yesterday, Renee said. It's ours again. Well, the foundation's anyway. First retreat for families in treatment starts next month. Don smiled. Eleanor would have loved that. Using Frank's restitution money to help others fight cancer? Perfect karma. The wind chimes tinkled as Serenity joined us, carrying Mom's old music box, the one that started everything. Found this while moving the bookshelf, she said. There's something still inside. I opened it carefully. A small key fell into my palm, along with a note in Mom's handwriting. For the beach house master bedroom. Some treasures are meant to be found twice. Renee leaned against the porch railing. Think she hid more evidence? No. I smiled, remembering Mom's love of mystery novels. I think she left us a treasure hunt. One last adventure. The retreat starts in 3 weeks, he said slowly. We could go down early, check it out. Road trip, Serenity exclaimed. I'll pack snacks. Dawn chuckled. I'll keep an eye on the house and the foundation paperwork. Inside, the newly painted walls glowed with warm colors Mom would have loved. Her books lined the shelves. Her art hung in places of honor. But it wasn't a shrine. Renee's coffee shop award sat beside my journalism degree, new memories mixing with old. Before you go, Dawn said, pulling out an envelope. There's one more thing. A letter Eleanor wrote the day she finalized her will. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest children, by now you've found your way back to each other, back to the truth, back home. The house was never just about property. It was about giving you both a foundation to rebuild from. Renee, my sweet boy, you are always more than your father's ambitions. Your kindness shines through now, just as I knew it would once you broke free. Selah, my fierce girl, you've become everything I hoped. Strong enough to fight, wise enough to forgive, brave enough to love again. The beach house key opens more than a door. It opens the next chapter. Write it together. All my love, Mom. Renee wiped his eyes. She knew we'd fix things. She made sure we could, I said. Gave us all the tools we needed. Serenity emerged from inside, car keys jingling. Beach house treasure hunt? I already called shotgun. The wind chimes sang as we loaded the car. Dawn waved from the porch, looking satisfied. The keeper of Mom's secrets now free to just be our friend. Ready? I asked Renee as we pulled out of the driveway. He held up Mom's key. For another Eleanor Meyer mystery? Always. The house grew smaller in my rearview mirror, but I wasn't leaving it behind. Mom had given us roots and wings, a home to return to and the strength to fly. Hey, Serenity said from the back seat. Think there's actually treasure in the beach house? There already is, I replied, thinking of Mom's letter. We just have to find it. Renee turned up the radio, Mom's favorite station. As we drove toward the coast, toward whatever adventure she'd planned for us, I felt her presence in the music, in Renee's laugh, in the key that promised more discoveries ahead. She'd given us one last gift, the chance to write our own ending to her story. Together.